currently learning, whether that's in the space of perhaps some more effective delegation, leadership, or even technical expertise. So I want to look at two aspects, two contexts for thinking about learning. The first is the context of, we can think about it as knowing or learning about a new domain or a new topic. And of course, we can have a low level of learning about or a high level. The second is doing, putting this into practice. And again, we can have a lower level doing or a high level of doing. And we can divide this into 4 quadrants. Start off and think about the top end, where you have a very high level of learning about, but a low level of practicing. And I'm going to call this quadrant a quadrant of the thinker. So you've done the reading, you've read my emails, you've got the insights, and you can really talk about and understand the concepts and ideas. But for whatever reason, you haven't been putting it into practice. You haven't been developing the embodied skill of doing the task. Now, I don't ever know what this is, but there's some kind of hesitation, some doubt, some overwhelm. Might be about making time. But somehow you mean to act, but you don't. So you've got insight, but you're not getting the impact. So perhaps you're in the thinker quadrant. But we also have the high doing, someone who's really in action, but low new knowledge, not involved in the learning about. And I'm going to call this the capped quadrant. This is the space of someone who's practical, hands-on, trying to figure out things for yourself. You get things done, but it's not always the easy way. So when it comes to new skills, you're probably working harder than you need to, using old tools for new problems. Progress is much slower than it needs to be. So you may be in this capable but capped quadrant. Third quadrant we could look at is the low learning, low doing. And I'm going to call this resident quadrant. Now, this doesn't mean you're not already at a high level and highly skilled. You may be doing well and in action in your role, but this is about learning going forward, the growing, the learning, the moving into new areas. So your rate of learning about is low and your rate of practicing is low. It's a little bit of a space of inertia. Doesn't mean you don't care, but it's hard to get back into motion. Now, this for some people is because you've been burnt out or traumatized or something's happened in the past and you're tired. But for others, it's a confidence issue. But again, we can look at what is it for you? Just reflect. You don't need to tell anyone this. Which of these 3 quadrants would you think you're in? And then, of course, we've got the 4th quadrant, which is the world of high theory or high knowing about, but also high action, high practice, experimenting. And so this one we could call the learning leader. So this is really a space where there's an alignment between what you're learning about and the practicing and putting it into action. You're not just trying to figure it out entirely for yourself. Not there's anything wrong with that. It just can be slow. You're getting the help, you're learning the theory, you're getting the context, but you're not just doing that. You're putting it into action. You're starting to embody it. It's like a sports person. I could learn the rules of a sport, but that doesn't give me the skills of playing. By working in this space, the learning leader, you're becoming a new person on purpose. So take a moment, pause the video if you will, reflect on where you are and where do you want to be. Now, this could be in the domain of efficiency, in leadership, in delegation, or in a technical skill. Most of us really want to be in the learning leader space. And we can think about what might we need to do if we're somewhere else. So if we're the thinker, if we're in the thinker quadrant, we're wanting to move over here. And my suggestion, if you will, is to pick one move, one aspect that you can start to do that you feel comfortable enough to do, or the risk is low. Try it, learn through doing it. If the reason you're not acting is you're just too busy, it's one of these big rocks, put it in at the beginning of the week, start doing it and let other things fall as they may. So you start to get into action. If you're in the capped quadrant, you might be thinking, what could I learn and from whom could I learn it to really start to shift my results? And if you're in the resident quadrant, start small. Start to think about what's one thing you could develop and learn some theory of, but also one thing you could start to put in practice. You don't need to go via the capped or the thinker quadrants. You can move through theory, learning about and doing practice, and become a learning leader. Now, of course, if you're a learning leader, there's always somewhere to go. We're never at the peak. There's always going to be something new. Change happens. It keeps on happening. As a colleague of mine once said, in the space of learning or what's possible, we're on a mountain that has no top. So enjoy the climb, keep learning, keep practicing. In the words of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. I'll leave you with that. What are you going to do? What are you going to know? And I wonder what possibilities that will open for you to help others build your own career and make education or the department you're working in a better place.